The smell hit him first. That sour, spoiled odor that didn't belong anywhere near a first-class cabin. But before Marcus Reed could even react, the flight attendant had already walked away with a look that said she didn't care. He lifted the foil lid and froze. The chicken breast on his plate was covered in fuzzy green mold. For a second, he thought maybe his eyes were playing tricks on him. Then the passenger next to him leaned closer, saw it too, and whispered, "Oh my God." It was supposed to be a relaxing flight, one last moment of peace before another week of high-pressure meetings. Marcus had just finalized a multi-million-dollar merger in New York. The deal made headlines. A young black CEO leading one of the fastest-growing tech companies in America. He had earned this seat in first class, earned the champagne, the comfort, the respect. But respect, it seemed, was the one thing he wouldn't get today. He'd boarded quietly, dressed in his usual travel style, tailored navy blue suit, polished shoes, discreet watch. He didn't flaunt his success, but he carried it with the quiet confidence of a man who had built something from nothing. As he placed his briefcase in the overhead bin, he caught the attendant. Her name tag read Cheryl, watching him with a smirk. "Sir," she said sharply, "first class is rows 1 and 2. You sure you're in the right section?" Marcus gave a polite smile. "Yes, ma'am. Seat 2A. Her expression shifted not to embarrassment but irritation. "Right, of course," she said in a tone thick with sarcasm. She moved on quickly, but not before muttering under her breath, "Figures." He ignored it. He'd dealt with worse. Years of walking into boardrooms full of people who underestimated him had taught Marcus the art of calm restraint. Still, there was something in her voice that lingered, something bitter, resentful. He decided not to give it any more thought. After takeoff, when the cabin lights dimmed and the seatbelt signs went off, Cheryl came back around with the meal service. She was polite to everyone else, smiling, offering drinks, chatting casually. But when she reached Marcus, her demeanor changed again. She dropped his tray roughly onto the table, not even looking at him. "Here you go," she said flatly, then turned her back before he could thank her. Marcus glanced at the food. The mashed potatoes looked dull and crusted, and the chicken had a strange grayish tint. He leaned closer and caught that unmistakable smell of rot. He peeled back the foil and saw the mold. Disgusted, he pressed the call button. Cheryl turned, visibly annoyed, and walked back. "Yes?" she asked sharply, her voice cutting through the low hum of the cabin. "Ma'am," Marcus said evenly, "this food is spoiled. It's covered in mold." She glanced at the tray and snorted. "It looks fine to me." "It's not," he replied, maintaining his composure. "You can see it clearly." Her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Well, maybe it's fine for your kind," she muttered, just loud enough for him to hear. The world seemed to pause. The passenger in the next seat looked at Marcus, horrified. The older couple across the aisle stopped mid-bite. Everyone had heard it. Marcus felt a slow burn in his chest, the kind of heat that comes not from anger alone, but from years of being told, subtly or directly, that he didn't belong. He took a long breath, forcing his jaw to unclench. His instinct screamed to confront her, but his discipline told him otherwise. "Could you please bring me another meal?" he said, calm but cold. She rolled her eyes. "We're out of chicken." "Then something else will do," he replied. She turned sharply and walked off, muttering something under her breath that sounded like, "Unbelievable." Marcus didn't need to hear it again to know exactly what she meant. He sat back, breathing deeply, staring at the untouched tray in front of him. The mold glistened under the cabin lights like a cruel joke. He thought about all the times he had to prove himself twice as capable, twice as smart, just to get half the respect. And now, even here, in first class in a seat he paid for, he was being treated like he didn't belong. The man next to him leaned in quietly. "I saw everything," he said. "You should report her." "That's not right." Marcus gave a small nod. "I will," he said softly. "But not here. Not now." He wasn't going to let anger control the moment. Instead, he decided to let professionalism and power speak louder than rage. He looked out the window, the sunlight breaking through the clouds, and made a quiet promise to himself. This would not end here. He reached for his phone, discreetly opening his notes app. Line by line, he documented the exchange. Every word, every detail, every insult. The date, the flight number, the time. Not for revenge, but for accountability. Cheryl might have thought she was just dealing with another passenger she could disrespect. She had no idea who Marcus Reed was, or how this one act of racism at 30,000 feet was about to change everything when the plane landed. He closed his phone and straightened his tie, the faintest trace of a smile forming at the corner of his mouth. The game had just begun. Marcus sat quietly for a moment, letting the hum of the engines drown out the whispering passengers around him. He'd learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than anger. The woman next to him shot him an apologetic look, as if she felt the shame that Cheryl didn't. Marcus just nodded politely, straightening his suit jacket as the flight attendants continued their service like nothing had happened. He pressed the small silver call button above his seat. A few seconds later, a younger attendant appeared. A tall man in his late 20s, clean-shaven, professional, and clearly nervous. "Yes, sir? How can I help you?" Marcus kept his tone calm, even friendly. "Hi, I think there's been a mistake with my meal. It's spoiled, moldy actually. Could you please take a look?" The attendant blinked, confused, and then leaned forward. The moment he saw the tray, his eyes widened. "Sir, I'm so sorry. This should never have been served." He immediately took the tray with both hands, careful not to spill anything. "I'll get you a replacement right away. Please accept my apologies." "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice low but steady. As the younger attendant, his name tag read Daniel, hurried off, Marcus could feel Cheryl watching from the galley. She was whispering to another flight attendant, rolling her eyes dramatically. It was the kind of silent mockery Marcus had seen too many times before. The unspoken message that he didn't deserve to be there, that his presence somehow disrupted their comfortable little world. When Daniel returned with a fresh tray and a sincere apology, Marcus smiled faintly. "You're doing fine," he said. "This isn't your fault." Daniel hesitated before speaking. "I'll make sure this is reported to the cabin manager, sir. Please let me know if there's anything else I can do." Marcus appreciated the professionalism. It was a reminder that decency still existed, even in a moment like this. But before he could say more, Cheryl appeared again. Her arms were crossed, and the forced smile on her face didn't reach her eyes. "Everything all right here?" she asked sweetly, but her tone dripped with sarcasm. "Yes," Marcus said simply. "Daniel handled it." "Thank you," Cheryl's smile tightened. "Good. We just don't want any unnecessary complaints, you know? Some people like to make a big deal out of small things." Marcus looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "Serving spoiled food isn't a small thing," he said evenly. "And the way you spoke to me earlier isn't either." Her face twitched. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do," Marcus replied calmly. The passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to get involved, but their glances said it all. They had heard her. Cheryl turned abruptly, muttering under her breath, "Always playing the victim." Marcus didn't respond. He had spent his entire career mastering the art of composure under pressure. As a black man in corporate America, he knew that one outburst could undo years of hard-earned respect. But there was a difference between being silent and being powerless. He took out his phone again, not to film, not yet, but to jot down every detail. Cheryl's words, the tone, the witnesses, the exact time. He even recorded Daniel's full name, knowing he might need an internal statement later. What Cheryl didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just any executive. His company, Reed Dynamics, had recently signed a strategic technology partnership with this very airline. He had personally met their CEO at a business summit 3 months ago, and right now, he could feel the irony building. A woman treating him like he didn't belong on a flight operated by a company that literally used his software. He leaned back in his seat, watching as Cheryl moved down the aisle, handing out drinks with fake smiles. She skipped him deliberately. He noticed, and so did the passengers beside him. Daniel, realizing what was happening, quietly returned with a bottle of sparkling water. "Compliments of the airline," he whispered. Marcus smiled slightly. "Thank you, Daniel." "I appreciate that. No problem, sir." And again, "I'm sorry for her behavior." "It's not your fault," Marcus said softly. "But don't worry. It'll be handled." He scrolled through his contacts and found a name that made him pause. Evan Marks, Senior Operations Director of the airline. A friend. Someone he'd shared dinner with during a conference. Marcus opened a message and typed carefully. Evan, need to speak urgently. Incident involving one of your first-class attendants on Flight 482 to LAX. Seat 2A. I'll explain upon landing. He hit send. Within minutes, 3 dots appeared on the screen. Got your message, Marcus. Don't worry. We'll have someone meet you at the gate. Marcus sat quietly for a moment, letting the hum of the engines drown out the whispering passengers around him. He'd learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than anger. The woman next to him shot him an apologetic look, as if she felt the shame that Cheryl didn't. Marcus just nodded politely, straightening his suit jacket as the flight attendants continued their service like nothing had happened. He pressed the small silver call button above his seat. A few seconds later, a younger attendant appeared. A tall man in his late 20s, clean-shaven, professional, and clearly nervous. Yes, sir? How can I help you? Marcus kept his tone calm, even friendly. Hi. I think there's been a mistake with my meal. Spoiled. Moldy, actually. Could you please take a look? The attendant blinked, confused, and then leaned forward. The moment he saw the tray, his eyes widened. Sir, I am so sorry. This should never have been served. He immediately took the tray with both hands, careful not to spill anything. I'll get you a replacement right away. Please accept my apologies. Thank you, Marcus said, his voice low but steady. As the younger attendant, his name tag read Daniel, hurried off, Marcus could feel Cheryl watching from the galley. She was whispering to another flight attendant, rolling her eyes dramatically. It was the kind of silent mockery Marcus had seen too many times before. The unspoken message that he didn't deserve to be there, that his presence somehow disrupted their comfortable little world. When Daniel returned with a fresh tray and a sincere apology, Marcus smiled faintly. You're doing fine, he said. This isn't your fault. Daniel hesitated before speaking. I'll make sure this is reported to the cabin manager, sir. Please let me know if there's anything else I can do. Marcus appreciated the professionalism. It was a reminder that decency still existed, even in a moment like this. But before he could say more, Cheryl appeared again. Her arms were crossed and the forced smile on her face didn't reach her eyes. Everything all right here? She asked sweetly, but her tone dripped with sarcasm. Yes, Marcus said simply. Daniel handled it. Thank you. Cheryl's smile tightened. Good, we just don't want any unnecessary complaints, you know? Some people like to make a big deal out of small things. Marcus looked up at her, his expression unreadable. Serving spoiled food isn't a small thing, he said evenly. And the way you spoke to me earlier isn't either. Her face twitched. I don't know what you're talking about. You do, Marcus replied calmly. The passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to get involved, but their glances said it all. They had heard her. Cheryl turned abruptly, muttering under her breath, always playing the victim. Marcus didn't respond. He had spent his entire career mastering the art of composure under pressure. As a black man in corporate America, he knew that one outburst could undo years of hard-earned respect. But there was a difference between being silent and being powerless. He took out his phone again, not to film, not yet, but to jot down every detail. Cheryl's words, the tone, the witnesses, the exact time. He even recorded Daniel's full name, knowing he might need an internal statement later. What Cheryl didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just any executive. His company, Reed Dynamics, had recently signed a strategic technology partnership with this very airline. He had personally met their CEO at a business summit 3 months ago. And right now, he could feel the irony building. A woman treating him like he didn't belong on a flight operated by a company that literally used his software. He leaned back in his seat, watching as Cheryl moved down the aisle, handing out drinks with fake smiles. She skipped him deliberately. He noticed, and so did the passengers beside him. Daniel, realizing what was happening, quietly returned with a bottle of sparkling water. Compliments of the airline, he whispered. Marcus smiled slightly. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. No problem, sir. And again, I'm sorry for her behavior. It's not your fault, Marcus said softly. But don't worry. It'll be handled. He scrolled through his contacts and found a name that made him pause. Evan Marks, Senior Operations Director of the airline. A friend, someone he'd shared dinner with during a conference. Marcus opened a message and typed carefully, "Evan, need to speak urgently. Incident involving one of your first-class attendants on Flight 482 to LAX. Seat 2A. I'll explain upon landing." He hit send. Within minutes, 3 dots appeared on the screen. "Got your message, Marcus. Don't worry. We'll have someone meet you at the gate." Marcus locked his phone and exhaled slowly. The situation had shifted. He wasn't angry anymore. He was focused. Cheryl had no idea that her casual cruelty had just set off a chain reaction that would reach far beyond this cabin. As the plane continued cruising above the clouds, Marcus looked out the window at the endless horizon. He wasn't just thinking about himself anymore. He was thinking about every time someone had been humiliated, dismissed or belittled because of the color of their skin, and didn't have the means or voice to fight back. This wasn't just another flight. This was a moment that would mean something. He sat back, composed and quiet, letting the plane carry him toward justice 1 mile at a time. The battle was no longer about a spoiled meal. It was about dignity. And when that plane touched down, Marcus Reed intended to remind the world that dignity always has power. The hours dragged on as the jet sliced through the sky, and the atmosphere in first class had shifted. What had started as polite murmurs was now a heavy silence filled with tension. Every so often passengers glanced at Marcus, then at Cheryl, their eyes betraying a quiet disapproval of the way she'd been treating him. Some whispered to each other, some shook their heads, but no one dared to speak up. Marcus noticed every detail, the uneasy shuffling, the sideways looks, the faint hum of whispers that floated above the steady roar of the engines. The man sitting in seat 3C, a silver-haired businessman, leaned forward slightly. "You handled that better than I would have," he murmured. "That woman's out of line." Marcus turned his head and gave a polite nod. "Thank you," he said softly. "I've learned there's no point in shouting at walls. They never listen." The older man chuckled grimly. "Maybe not. But walls can be torn down." Marcus smiled faintly at that but didn't respond. He returned his gaze to the window where clouds drifted like soft mountains below. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, flying thousands of feet above the world, yet still being looked down upon. A few minutes later, Cheryl appeared again, pushing a cart of drinks. Her face was a mask of forced professionalism, but the coldness in her movements was impossible to miss. She served each passenger, smiling, chatting, then skipped Marcus's seat entirely. She poured champagne for the woman across the aisle, then for the man behind him, and when she reached his row again, she deliberately turned the cart around, avoiding eye contact. The petty act was so transparent that a murmur ran through the cabin. The woman next to Marcus looked up at Cheryl. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough for others to hear. "You skipped his drink." Cheryl didn't even turn around. "He didn't ask for one," she said curtly, rolling the cart away. Marcus exhaled slowly, suppressing a tight laugh. He wasn't surprised anymore. This wasn't about food or drinks, it was about power, or her illusion of it, and she was losing it. He calmly reached for his phone again, this time opening the camera. He didn't hold it up to make a scene. Instead, he placed it discreetly on the armrest, camera angled toward the aisle. The lens captured everything. Her skipping him, her rude body language, the passengers' reactions. When Cheryl noticed the phone light blinking, she froze. "Are you recording me?" she snapped, loud enough for several heads to turn. Marcus looked up, his tone even but deliberate. "I'm documenting my experience, yes. For safety and accountability." Her voice rose an octave, defensive. "That's against policy." "I'm within my rights to record mistreatment," he said calmly. "You can check your company's policy if you'd like. I'm not filming anyone else, just you and your behavior." A man in the second row spoke up. "He's right," he said firmly. "I've been watching the whole time. You've been acting out of line since takeoff." That cracked her composure. "Excuse me?" she barked, spinning toward the man. "You don't know what you're talking about." Now the woman across the aisle joined in. "Actually, we all do," she said, voice sharp. "You've been rude, dismissive, and completely unprofessional." Cheryl's face reddened, her lips trembling with fury. "Mind your own business," she snapped, grabbing the cart handle. "Maybe you should start minding yours. the woman shot back. The commotion drew attention from the economy cabin. People were standing, craning their necks, trying to see what was happening in first class. Marcus stayed seated, calm, watching it all unfold like a storm he knew would break in his favor. Daniel, the younger attendant, rushed over, trying to de-escalate. "Cheryl, please," he said quietly. "Why don't you take a short break?" "I'll finish service. I don't need a break," she snapped, shoving the cart toward the galley. But her hands were shaking and her voice was cracking. It was clear to everyone she'd lost control. Marcus's phone buzzed softly on the armrest. A new message from Evan appeared. "Got confirmation. Our LAX ground team will meet you immediately upon landing. Handle nothing yourself. Just stay calm." Marcus smiled slightly. He replied, "Don't worry, I'm calm." As the tension settled, Daniel returned to Marcus's seat, kneeling slightly to keep his voice low. "Mr. Reed, I'm deeply sorry again for everything that's happened. I've informed the cabin manager discreetly. They'll speak with you before we land." "I appreciate that," Marcus said, his tone sincere. "I know this isn't on you," Daniel nodded gratefully. "You've been very patient, sir. Honestly, most people would have lost it by now." Marcus gave a faint smile. "Patience isn't weakness," he said. "Sometimes it's strategy." He looked around the cabin. The energy had changed again. This time, the passengers' sympathy was unmistakable. Quiet solidarity hung in the air. Several gave him encouraging nods. One even mouthed the word respect. Meanwhile, Cheryl stayed hidden in the galley for nearly half an hour, occasionally peeking out, her face pale and tense. She didn't return for the rest of the flight. Marcus leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a moment. He wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. He was thinking about how often people like Cheryl operated freely because no one called them out. But today, she'd picked the wrong man. When the captain's voice finally came over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our descent into Los Angeles shortly." Marcus opened his eyes, feeling an almost electric calm. He had done everything right. No shouting, no confrontation, just quiet, calculated truth. He gathered his documents, placed his phone safely in his pocket, and straightened his tie. The seatbelt sign chimed softly above him. The city lights of Los Angeles glittered below like scattered stars. The moment that plane touched down, justice would meet the runway. And Cheryl was about to learn exactly who she had tried to humiliate. The plane's wheels screeched against the runway, and the cabin jolted slightly as the engines roared in reverse thrust. The announcement came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off." A collective sigh of relief spread through first class. But for Marcus Reed, this wasn't relief. It was anticipation, the calm before a reckoning. He unbuckled slowly, adjusting his cufflinks, the faint sound of passengers stretching and collecting their things filling the air. The woman beside him leaned over and whispered, "Are you going to report her?" Marcus gave a polite smile. "Already did," he said. "They're waiting at the gate." The woman's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise, but she smiled approvingly. "Good. Someone like that shouldn't be in customer service." Marcus nodded, his gaze fixed on the aisle. Cheryl was standing near the galley, pretending to organize something on her cart, avoiding all eye contact. She looked tense, her posture rigid. It was clear she knew something was coming. The whispers and side glances from the other attendants weren't subtle. Word had spread among the crew that something serious was waiting for her outside that cabin door. The captain came on again. "Cabin crew, disarm doors and cross-check." Cheryl's hands trembled slightly as she followed procedure. Marcus noticed every detail, every nervous movement. He wasn't enjoying it. There was no satisfaction in watching someone crumble under the weight of their own actions. He just believed in consequences. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, the cabin filled with the sound of buckles unclipping and overhead bins opening. But before anyone could stand fully, 3 uniformed airline personnel boarded, 2 men in Navy suits and a woman with a clipboard. Behind them were 2 airport security officers, not armed but authoritative enough to silence the chatter instantly. One of the suited men spoke clearly, his voice steady and professional. "Good afternoon, everyone. We apologize for the brief delay. We need to speak with one of our crew members before deplaning begins. Please remain seated." Cheryl froze, her face drained of color. "Wait, what?" What's this about? She demanded, forcing a shaky laugh. The woman with the clipboard stepped forward. Cheryl Patterson, she asked firmly. Yes? Cheryl replied, her voice rising an octave. Please step aside. We need to speak with you regarding a reported incident during this flight. Her eyes widened, darting toward Marcus instinctively. Oh, this is ridiculous. He's lying. He's exaggerating everything. She sputtered. Marcus didn't say a word. He sat calmly, hands folded, his expression unreadable. Passengers began whispering again, phones discreetly recording the scene. Cheryl's voice grew shrill. He's just trying to ruin my career. You people are taking his side because he's... She stopped herself mid-sentence, realizing too late what she'd almost said. The damage was done. The male supervisor's tone hardened. That's enough, Cheryl. Please come with us. I didn't do anything wrong, she shouted, tears welling in her eyes. He's making it up. Daniel stepped forward quietly. Sir, he said to the supervisor, I was here. Everything he said is true. She was completely out of line. The tension in the cabin hit its peak. The older businessman from seat 3C spoke up, his voice calm but firm. I saw it too. The way she spoke to him was unacceptable. Then another passenger added, I recorded it. I'll share the footage if needed. That was the final nail. The supervisor nodded, his expression grim. Thank you, everyone. We have enough to proceed. Cheryl's protests turned to desperate pleading. You can't do this. I've been with this airline for 12 years. The supervisor's tone was respectful but final. You're being relieved of duty pending investigation. Please exit the aircraft. She looked one last time at Marcus, her eyes filled with bitterness. You think you've won something? She hissed. Marcus finally spoke, his tone low and steady. No, I just think you lost something you should have valued. Basic human decency. She flinched at the words, then turned and stormed off the plane, escorted by the officers. The cabin remained silent. No one moved until the airline staff gave the all-clear for passengers to disembark. The supervisor approached Marcus. Mr. Reed, on behalf of our airline, I'd like to sincerely apologize. What happened today is inexcusable. We've already contacted our corporate office. They'd like to speak with you personally. Marcus stood, smoothing his jacket. I appreciate your professionalism, he said calmly. I don't need compensation. Just accountability. The supervisor nodded respectfully. You have our word, sir. It will be handled swiftly. As Marcus walked toward the exit, passengers offered quiet nods and words of respect. The woman beside him touched his arm lightly and said, You handled that with more grace than most people ever could. He gave a faint smile. Sometimes silence is the loudest response. Stepping into the jet bridge, Marcus was met by two corporate representatives in crisp suits. They greeted him by name, apologizing profusely. Mr. Reed, we were horrified to hear what happened. We've already begun an internal review. The footage passengers shared has made it to our team, and we're taking this very seriously. Marcus nodded, unfazed by the sudden rush of corporate damage control. Good, he said simply. No one deserves to be humiliated in public, no matter who they are. As he walked through the terminal, cameras flashed from curious bystanders who had caught snippets of the unfolding drama online. Someone whispered, That's him, the CEO from the flight. Marcus ignored the attention. He wasn't looking for fame, only justice. And as the automatic doors slid open to the California sunlight, he finally exhaled deeply. The cool air hit his face, cleansing away the stale tension of the cabin. He had handled it with patience, precision, and purpose, proof that real strength didn't need to shout. Sometimes it just needed to wait until the landing. By the next morning, Marcus's name was everywhere. Videos from passengers had flooded social media. Short clips showing the moment he calmly confronted Cheryl, the way she snapped back, and finally the dramatic ending when airline staff escorted her off the plane. The caption on one of the viral posts read, Black CEO humiliated mid-air, handles it like a true boss. It spread like wildfire across every platform. Within 12 hours, it had been shared by major news outlets, influencers, and business leaders. Marcus woke up to hundreds of missed calls and messages. His assistant had left 3 voicemails, all urgent. When he checked his inbox, he found dozens of interview requests from morning shows and podcasts. But Marcus didn't rush to respond. He took his time, sipping his coffee while reading the comments online. There were thousands, people applauding his composure, others expressing outrage at the discrimination he'd faced, and many saying his story gave them courage to stand up for themselves. For Marcus, it wasn't about revenge or viral fame. It was about dignity. The incident wasn't just a moment of personal disrespect. It was a mirror reflecting how prejudice could still exist even in places where professionalism was supposed to, Well, he turned on the TV. Every major network had picked up the story. The headline banner read, "Airline faces backlash after racist treatment of black CEO." The footage showed Marcus sitting quietly in his first-class seat while Cheryl's voice, sharp and condescending, could be faintly heard. Then came the footage of her being escorted off the plane, her face pale and panicked. A news anchor summarized, "What's striking about this viral moment is not just the discrimination, but how Mr. Reed chose to respond, with composure, evidence, and quiet strength. It's a masterclass in handling racism with grace." Marcus sighed and turned off the screen. He didn't need the praise. He just wanted it to mean something, to start a conversation that actually led to change. Later that afternoon, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Evan Marks, the airline's senior operations director. Marcus answered. "Marcus," Evan began, his tone filled with regret. "I just want to say, personally and on behalf of the entire company, we're deeply sorry. What happened was unacceptable." "I appreciate that, Evan," Marcus replied calmly. "But I'm not interested in an apology that ends in a press release. I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else again." Evan agreed immediately. "We're already implementing new diversity and anti-bias training for all flight staff. Cheryl Patterson has been terminated effective immediately, and we're revising our reporting process so passengers can file in-flight complaints directly to management." Marcus was silent for a moment before saying, "That's a start." Evan hesitated. "We'd also like to offer you a lifetime VIP membership as a gesture." Marcus interrupted politely. "No, thank you. I don't want special treatment. I just want fair treatment for everyone." There was a pause, and then Evan said softly, "Understood." After the call ended, Marcus looked out the window of his high-rise apartment. The city buzzed beneath him, Los Angeles alive as ever, oblivious to the noise his story had created. He thought about his younger self, the kid who had once been told he didn't look like someone who could lead a company. The man who had sat through countless meetings where he was mistaken for an assistant rather than the CEO. And now, the same man had just turned an act of racism into a national conversation about accountability and respect. By evening, hashtags related to the story trended worldwide. Fly with respect, dignity in the sky, and Marcus Reed. People began sharing their own stories, flight attendants apologizing for colleagues' bad behavior, passengers recounting similar experiences of bias, and thousands thanking Marcus for setting the example. When a popular business news outlet finally reached him for a short interview, Marcus agreed, not to boast but to speak truth. Sitting in a minimalist office facing the camera, he spoke slowly and clearly. "This wasn't about me," he said. "It was about a principle. I didn't raise my voice because I didn't need to. I had evidence. I had self-control. And most importantly, I had self-respect. That's something no one can take from you, no matter how high or low you are." The interviewer asked, "Do you forgive her?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I don't hold hatred in my heart," he said softly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning and making sure no one else has to experience what I did." The clip was shared millions of times within hours. Viewers praised not just his composure, but the depth of his message. For many, it was a reminder that true power wasn't in shouting. It was in standing firm, calm and confident, even when others tried to tear you down. That night, as Marcus finally closed his laptop and prepared to sleep, his phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from Daniel, the young flight attendant from the plane. "Mr. Reed, I just wanted to thank you. What you did changed a lot more than you realize. People like me, we saw how you handled it. You gave us courage." Marcus smiled, his chest heavy with quiet pride. He typed back, "Keep doing what's right, Daniel. The world changes one act at a time." He put his phone down and stared out at the city lights flickering beyond his window. The whole ordeal had started with something as small as a spoiled meal, but it had ended with something far bigger. Marcus had shown that real leadership doesn't just happen in boardrooms or on stages. Sometimes it happens in silence at 30,000 feet, in the face of hate, with nothing more than composure and conviction as your armor. And as the world kept talking, Marcus Reed drifted off to sleep, not angry, not triumphant, but at peace, knowing he had turned humiliation into history.